Now, persons who discriminate against women and other groups in the purchase of land are likely to face the law following the coming into force of a new land law. The provision, according to senior law lecturer at the University of Ghana Law School, Kwame Jan, aims at addressing gender discrimination against women in the northern part of the country who cannot own land unless they do so in the name of a man. Speaking at a training of surveyors of the Ghana Institute of Surveyors on the new Land Act 2020, Kwame Jan said the law will go hard on anyone who discriminates against a woman acquiring a land on her own.
No, Article 17 prohibits discrimination on the basis of gender, creed, religion, political affiliation, or so and so and so. What Section 11 has done is to say that if you are discriminating against anybody, and here our main target was gender discrimination. Because in our rounds, when we were looking at this law, we found out that in some parts of the country, women were not allowed to hold land in their own right. We found out that for some areas, women were required to come with a man. It doesn't matter the age. I asked, how old should the male person be? He said, oh, a male, even if he's 2 years, he's a male. And I said, this is not fair. So Section 11 has taken care of that situation. Now, another innovation which has found itself in the statute, you all know about, particularly those of you who are around the Lands Commission setup, the customary land secretariats. Finally, these have been institutionalized. The customary land secretariats, which all the land-owning entities, the groups, would have to have, now has legal legislative backing. So if you look at Section 13 all the way to Section 18, deals with customary land secretariats. So all the traditional landowners must have their own customary land secretariat.
Joining us via Zoom is private legal practitioner Justice Abdullahi. He is a law lecturer at the University of Professional Studies. Thank you, Justice Abdullahi, for joining us. This, for many individuals, is good news because for many, many years in some parts of the country, women are simply unable to own properties, landed properties, that is. So going forward, per this new law, what are some of the sanctions thereof for individuals who breach this one?
Indeed, much as you are right in saying that for many years women have been going through these challenges, I need to point out that indeed this has always been unconstitutional. It has been unlawful right from the beginning. So despite the act of this practice elsewhere, it's not sanctioned by law, and that the law deals with such persons if reported in accordance with our criminal code and other things. Now, the difference, however, here is that we didn't have that regime that existed such that it was this comprehensive and consolidated in one piece of legislation. So it was always the case that you would have to find trades and be able to rope in the conduct against a person who has been discriminated against to be able to prosecute him. Because remember that our Constitution already provides a landscape on matters of discrimination. But it does not provide in all instances the punishment to be meted at, but it provides means of addressing such discriminatory conduct without necessarily having to punish a person for it. So that is the marked difference between this piece of legislation and what the Constitution provided, indeed what is also provided for under the criminal procedure, our criminal codes. So this is the major and difference between the new act and these two acts. Now, if you look at the punitive measures that have been spelled out, it starts, for me, the most satisfactory part is the custodial sentence. It's as much as 10 years in some instances. I think the minor one you may get would probably be a fine, which is quite high. But the custodial sentence could go as much as 10 years. And I think that's more satisfactory, and that is very good for all of us.
And for many of these communities, I must admit, who are in rural Ghana, who have for years perpetuated this illegality, as you have just told us, how should we be positioning ourselves to ensure that these rural communities who are bent on carrying down tradition from one generation to the other do not carry these generational practices through, clearly in violation of a law that we have just spoken about?
I think in that regard, my senior Kwame Jan is doing quite well with the education bit of it, because really everything starts with education. I mean, that is not to endorse the position that ignorance of the law is an excuse, but I think it's just right that we go on the preventive bit of it than being on the reactive. And so having to educate the person, particularly the communities involved in some of these practices, is a first step in addressing this whole issue. Okay. Once we do that, the law is there, and then the law exists already. So really, once we do the education bit, it becomes relatively easier for the person to understand the basis of any punishment that is meted out to him when he engages in this. And then he can then talk about all the deterrent circumstances and the effects that it will have. Now, having said that, we should also understand that there are genuine difficulties even with the implementation of the law, particularly with regards to the police who do most of these prosecutions as against the Attorney General.
Right.
There are a lot of instances where you notice that the police do not even understand or do not even know the existence of some of these laws. And so I think in looking at the implementation of the law, we should not, and the education part of it, it should not be just focused on the communities who practice some of these unlawful conduct, but also with our own internal prosecutorial authorities, how to educate them, how to make them aware of the existence of some of these laws. That is the best way. So it should be a holistic and indeed comprehensive approach towards having a better system.